Diabetes Reversal Through Long-Term System Control Part 2, number 1630, the 7th of May 2026, Gerald C. EclaireMD Foundation, Category Diabetes, Lifestyle Medicine. The 10-year time constant of diabetes reversal. One of the most important lessons from my experience is the amount of time required. It took approximately 1 decade, 10 years from 2010 to 2020 to reach a deeply stabilized condition. From a physics or engineering viewpoint, this is not surprising. A system that deteriorated over many years usually cannot recover in a few weeks, months, or even a few years. The human biomedical system has memory. Fat accumulation, insulin resistance, beta cell exhaustion, liver glucose output, inflammation, vascular stiffness, and nervous system regulation all change slowly over time. They respond gradually to repeated daily inputs. This is why short-term studies often miss this deepest truth. A 3-month or 6-month study may show temporary glucose improvement, but it cannot fully reveal long-term metabolic remodeling. My data show that some of the most important improvements appeared later, especially in early mornings fasting glucose after a full night of sleep. Those deeper improvements required years of sustained correction. Diabetes as a root cause of many mortality diseases. Diabetes is not merely a glucose disease. It is a whole-body metabolic disorder. High glucose damages blood vessels, nerves, kidneys, eyes, heart, brain, and many other organs. It also interacts with obesity, blood pressure, lipids, inflammation, vascular stiffness, and immune function. This is why diabetes is closely connected with many major mortality diseases, including 85% of strokes, 75% of cardiovascular disease (CVD), 65% of chronic kidney disease (CKD), 40% of dementia, neuropathy, retinopathy, and part of cancer risk. In many cases, diabetes is not the only cause, but it acts as a major root driver. It behaves like a slow-burning fire inside the biomedical system. This is why the FPG and PPG improvements in my charts are important. They are not only glucose markers, they are indicators of reduced metabolic stress throughout the body. Why this study is rare? I believe this type of research is rare for several reasons. First, most diabetes studies rely on population statistics rather than one patient's high-density longitudinal data. Collected over 15 to 16 years, population studies can reveal broad patterns, but they often hide individual system behavior. My work focuses on one body, one system, and one continuous long-term movie. Second, many studies separate variables into isolated categories. In real life, the biomedical system does not separate variables. Food, exercise, sleep, body weight, visceral fat, stress, insulin resistance, liver glucose output, and pancreatic workload all interact dynamically. Third, many studies focus mainly on medication effects. This article is different. It focuses on what can happen through long-term lifestyle control, discipline, knowledge, and persistence. Finally, very few people collect enough data over a long enough period to see the full trajectory clearly. Even I could not fully recognize the pattern during the early years. Only after 15 to 16 years could I look backward and clearly see the overall system behavior. The main scientific message from these charts is that diabetes should be viewed as a dynamic system state rather than a fixed disease label. In my case, movement toward better regulation required several forces working together. Food control reduced glucose input, walking increased glucose disposal, body weight and visceral fat reduction, lowered insulin resistance, and continuous glucose feedback allowed ongoing system adjustment. The most important result was not merely improved post-meal glucose. The deeper result was the large fasting glucose reduction during the later 5 years. This suggests that my baseline metabolic regulation improved substantially. My insulin resistance decreased. Pancreatic beta cell workload was likely relieved, and my metabolic system moved toward a more stable operating condition. This is why I say diabetes is greatly reversible. I do not claim miracle cure or complete reversal. I simply report what happened in my own body after long-term disciplined system control. A message to patients. For patients around the world suffering from diabetes, my message is simple. Do not assume diabetes is only a permanent sentence. The metabolic system has adaptive ability. The body can improve if daily inputs are corrected consistently over a sufficiently long period of time. However, this process is difficult. It requires knowledge measurement, honest observation, persistence, and willingness to change food habits, walking habits, and daily routines. Most importantly, it requires time. The body did not become diabetic overnight. And it does not recover overnight, in my own case. It took approximately 10 years to reach a deeply stabilized condition. My purpose is not to blame patients who struggle with this process. Life itself is difficult. Many people lack time, support, knowledge, or long-term discipline. My purpose is simply to share the truth from my own body so that people can understand what may be possible. Conclusion: after 15 to 16 years of observation and approximately 10 years of persistent system correction, the overall picture is now clear to me. My diabetes condition became greatly reversible through long-term food control, exercise, glucose monitoring, and disciplined lifestyle management. The first chart shows the overall 10-year downward movement of glucose, food load, and metabolic stress. The second chart reveals the most important detail. The later 5 years produced a much larger fasting glucose reduction than the early 5 years. This finding is important because FPG reflects deeper insulin resistance, liver glucose production, basal insulin effectiveness, and pancreatic beta cell workload. A major long-term FPG decline suggests that the underlying metabolic foundation itself improved. The truth from my body is this: diabetes is not completely reversible in every sense, but it can become greatly reversible in functional terms. The process is slow, difficult, and demanding. But it is possible. It requires knowledge, persistence, long-term discipline, daily system control, and time. According to the latest 2025 edition of the International Diabetes Federation IDF Diabetes Atlas, approximately 589 million adults worldwide are currently living with diabetes, representing about 1 out of every 9 adults on Earth. This is the knowledge I want to share with people worldwide who suffer from diabetes and related mortality diseases. I cannot force anyone to follow this path, but I can at least share the truth first. In my own body, the truth is clear. Long-term disciplined lifestyle control greatly improved my diabetes, insulin resistance, and metabolic stability. Epilogue: other than a few government-sponsored research projects, very few medical studies contain over 1 decade of continuous data with millions of data points from a single patient. That is why my clinical case has its own uniqueness and value for other patients. There are certainly scholars smarter than me, but many of them may not have personally lived through multiple chronic diseases themselves. Direct experience changes how a person observes, thinks, and prioritizes problems. A patient living through chronic disease every day sees patterns, fears, frustrations, and practical realities that often do not fully appear in textbooks or statistical models. Over time, I learned how different foods affected my PPG, how walking reduced post-meal glucose, and how fasting glucose reflected deeper metabolic conditions than many people realize. I also learned that body weight, visceral fat, food portion, exercise, sleep, and stress continuously interact within one biomedical system. Eventually, thousands of small daily corrections accumulated into meaningful structural change. My body did not improve because of one heroic action. It improved because of consistent corrections repeated over many years. This is why long-term diabetes reversal is so difficult. The principle itself is not impossible. The difficulty lies in sustaining the effort for many years. However, my job is not to force people to follow my path. My job is simply to share the knowledge. Once people understand that type 2 diabetes can become greatly reversible through disciplined lifestyle management, they at least know they are not helpless. Disclaimer: I write this paper not for fame, but to share what I have learned so others can understand their health, prevent disease, and live longer, healthier lives. This content is provided for educational reference only and does not constitute medical advice. No doctor-patient relationship is created. You may share this summary freely, but it must not be altered, edited, or republished as your own. All intellectual property rights and copyrights for this article and its related materials belong to T. He author Gerald C. This content is provided for educational reference only and does not constitute medical advice. No doctor-patient relationship is created. You may share this summary freely, but it must not be altered, edited, or republished as your own. All intellectual property rights and copyrights for this article and its related materials belong to the author, Gerald C.